What's going on, guys? Today I'm going to do a reaction video on a therapy session, somewhat a therapy session on this show called Married at First Sight. So I'm going to give you my perspective of what's going on and what I agree with, not agree with, and just kind of comment along on some of the techniques. Apparently there's a issue and a fight with this couple, and so we're going to dive deep to see what this is all about and see what the therapist has to say.
Molly's mad at me because she was talking to a guy at the bar, and I didn't like her talking to a guy at the bar. Would you like to respond?
Disgusting.
So now we know how she feels.
You know it's bad when you're arguing, you're name calling. Usually that's it's over, but the crying at that point.
You're recording yourself being like, Molly did this tonight because...
So that's the world I'm living in.
Tell me your thinking behind videotaping her.
When you try to
I think at that moment, I wouldn't go into the videotape right away because I think clearly recording the videotape, that's going to create some tension with your partner. I think I would have gone like, hey, I see that you're frustrated, or some kind of reflection of emotion first before kind of going into figuring out what made him do that.
Explain things to people and they're like, this doesn't make a lot of sense. So I'm gonna do that so that I can go, here's an example, here's what I'm talking about when I say.
And so that's not the first time she's spoken to you like that?
That's not the first time.
Okay. Although I don't agree with the means that John used in videotaping Molly, I understand why he did that. Up until this point, we have not seen this raw, emotional, and pretty mean side of Molly.
Like one of the phrases that she's.
So notice how he's crossing his arms there in therapy. When someone does that, it means they're about to get vulnerable. So they subconsciously close up like that to protect themselves about a vulnerability or an emotional expression that they're about to give.
Used, quote, when you touch me, it makes my skin crawl.
She said that to you?
Yeah, and she said it again in Florida. But you see where that's a mixed signal when we were in the club 10 minutes before that and you were grinding on me and you were okay touching me.
That's a mixed message.
And that's what it's been the whole time. And so I don't want to play this game anymore.
The way in which Molly is treating him. If Molly has been saying pretty terrible things to John since the beginning, I am surprised that Molly and John have made it this far. Have a seat. One of the mistakes that I believe Molly's making in her marriage is not opening up about what really is going on with her. Okay.
Whenever mixed messages are happening, even with yourself, if there's an outcome that you want, but for whatever reason, you don't know why you behave in a certain way, the layer is beneath the surface, and you gotta do some discovery and bring it out. It's in the subconscious, and you do that through honest conversations, through therapy, doing that work. That happens with the relationships. If you say one thing and you're doing another, instead of trying to figure it out, get the person to try to express themselves and say like, hey, what is really going on here? There's a blind spot here because your words are not aligning with your behaviors.
So I've been able to talk to both of you, and do you both feel like you have truly given it your all?
Yeah, absolutely.
I really don't feel like there's anything I could or would have done differently.
Really? Nothing you regret?
Not really.
That's a bad sign. That's a bad sign whenever you get with someone and feel like they've done everything and there's nothing they could have enhanced or done better. Newsflash, there's always something that you could have done better, no matter what the situation is. So that's a red flag.
John, can you pull up the video?
Okay, so here she's going to confront with some evidence to show like, you couldn't have done this better. Let's see if she actually accepts the accountability. This is called spitting in the soup technique in therapy. Let's see if she's actually able to absorb that information and accept I could have done better, or if she's going to have cognitive dissonance and play mental gymnastics to get away from it, to keep her ego intact.
So she was chatting with a guy at the bar.
Have you seen this?
So we can see that that's clearly a mature person's response.
When John's showing me the video, I feel very betrayed that he's even taken it to this level where he's just willing to do whatever to try and tear me down.
Yeah, here we are. I think I know. I think if you're following me here comes the cognitive dissonance. Let's turn it around. This is called position hopping. And I'll explain to you at the end of the video what that really looks like.
And make me hurt. He's really shown his true colors. And it's just gone such a bad direction that there's really no going back. What is this supposed to show me?
So, Molly, your language that you used with him was vile.
Yeah, and that's the first time I've used that language, ever.
I don't think that you've been honest about that, and I don't know if it's because you're trying to protect yourself at this point.
Yeah, I'm literally about to lose my...
I kind of had a feeling she's essentially trying to defend her position that was the first time I did it. The original question was, could you have done something better? And she can't admit to that. When you can't get a person to admit to any kind of accountability, like, you know what, or admissions, like I could have done that, that's a bad sign. Look at the other guy. I forgot his name, but look at him. He's like leaning back. He's not leaning towards her. He wants nothing to do with her.
So if we could just please de-escalate it.
What is it about seeing the video that is
Good question.
most upsetting?
Good
For
question.
one, that he's using that to try and really just hurt me, because I mean, he doesn't need to, he could just tell what happened. He doesn't need to, be using it for
Yeah, you know what? He
ammo.
could tell what happened, except every time I've asked you something, you sugarcoat events and talk about things as if they didn't happen in that way. I asked you about the fight in Florida. It was nothing like that. Nothing like that. So
I said that
I
we both
understand
said-
you don't like my honesty, but I don't like your lies.
That's intense. Clearly, this is TV, but it is, this is a professional. I don't think I would go that aggressive. I don't know what kind of relationship they have, if they feel comfortable. Sometimes as a therapist, you do have to get really, really hard with your clients in a respectful way and say, hey, I don't appreciate you lying to me. Don't waste my time. Clearly, in order for her to get some reality check, this therapist is having to go really, really, really hard on her.
When Jessica said that she didn't like Molly's lies, it, for me, was just a validation, because
I know that I was patient, and I know that I tried everything I could to make her feel comfortable. And
obviously the experts aren't there and they don't see everything and they don't get filled in on all of the information. So it's not my word versus hers. It's, I have evidence, and this is now your word versus yourself.
If you were a couple that was seeing me in couples counseling, this would be a situation where I would say to you, both of you, why are you here? Why are you allowing someone to speak to you this way in your home? And you've talked about being friends, and you've talked about a friendship. There is no friend that talks to a friend like that.
Yeah, so that's a very good point. If you're complaining about a person, if they're abusing you verbally, if you're having evidence that this person clearly is a terrible person, why are you here? Sometimes people like the abuse. That's what they're familiar with, is toxicity, or the fact that he's being rejected by this person he likes, keeps him there, wants to keep his ego intact. So there's always two people involved with the problem in a relationship. One person will allow it and one person does it, or a little mix of both.
I want to help them to be able to work through this, but someone saying to you that you are disgusting multiple times, it is unacceptable and may have been the nail in the coffin in their marriage. And my advice to them at this point is to stop faking it for the cameras. That's the only hope that they have.
Yeah, well, that's the part, and I'm glad she mentioned that. In these shows, a lot of people sometimes will behave differently, but that's a good example of when the relationship, there's enough evidence to walk away, but for whatever reason, because we have unhealthy relationships with ourselves, we can't really make the decision to take that step. But interestingly enough, like I thought, she wasn't going to accept. There's no accountability, and it's just, the relationship's not going to work. So I totally forgot to explain what position hopping. So position hopping, whenever you're arguing with someone, and you have these two positions, right? You're arguing about, hey, you talk to me, you don't have good communication skills, or you're not talking to me with respect, whatever, right? So that's the point here. And whenever someone position hops because they don't want to deal with the problem or they don't want to be held accountable, they're going to jump to something else. They take a different position. The problem is that people end up following that person to that point, and then they start discussing that. And then once they kind of corner them there or kind of resolve that, they'll jump to another one, when in reality, this is the real one that they wanted to avoid. And you saw that here in this breakdown with the therapy session, or the snippet of the therapy session. And she just didn't want to admit, hey, that wasn't right how I spoke to you, and I admit that. Her problem is not that she doesn't want to admit to the way she was speaking to him. She doesn't want to admit her true emotions, which is maybe she doesn't want to be with him, but she's wants to stick around for the show. So anyway, I just wanted to explain what position hopping is. It's just a relationship is not going to work. You have to agree to at least 80% of the narrative in a relationship. 20% is a little bit of disagreement. Okay, I don't totally agree with it, but 80% of the narrative has to be intact. In this case, she was completely opposite of Jonathan's complaint. She wasn't acknowledging it at all. When that happens, you can't even sit at the table to negotiate in a relationship, much less in a marriage. Anyway, that's all that I have for you today. Let me know if you enjoyed the content. Thank you for stopping by. Click like and subscribe to the channel if you're new. And thank you. And remember, ego is in your amigo.